Before I met Lila, my life was a series of peaceful, ordinary days, without anything special to change the course of things. I was an average guy, not standing out, but also not lacking anything. My days passed quietly, filled with simple work, chats with friends, and long afternoons spent watching the sunset from my window. My world was small, until Lila stepped into it. She wasn't like anyone I had ever met. Lila had an irresistible charm, a beauty that wasn't just in her appearance but in the way she looked, smiled, and spoke. The first time I saw her at a small party hosted by a friend, I was drawn to her instantly. She stood at the corner of the room, the soft light shining on her beautiful face, and I couldn't look away, as if some invisible force was pulling me closer. Lila wasn't the type of person who was easily approachable. She had confidence, a kind of cold demeanor that I thought was a veil for something deeper within. But when I walked up to her, she looked at me with curious eyes, neither surprised nor arrogant, just a gentle welcome. We started talking, and from that moment, everything between us began to change. In the following nights, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Lila was not only the most beautiful woman I had ever met, but she was also someone with deep thoughts. She talked about books she loved, the trips she dreamed of, and the ideals she held dear in life. I felt there was something very real about her. I started believing that this was the woman I would want to spend my life with. We began meeting more often. Our first dates were simple, walking under the streetlights, chatting about everything under the sun. Every moment with her became special, even the smallest of things. One night, while we were at the movies, she gently rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt a peace that I had never known before. In that moment, I knew I had found true love. We spent long evenings together, sharing dreams and aspirations. Lila once told me that she wanted a life not only filled with material comfort but also one where she could be free, free to chase her passions, free to explore the world. I, on the other hand, a more cautious man, dreamed of a warm home, a small family. Yet, I believed that together, we could create a beautiful future. Our relationship was not just love, it was a union of dreams, desires, and the acceptance of each other, even with our differences. Lila became not just my girlfriend, but a part of my life. I thought our love would last forever. Every time I looked into her eyes, I didn't just see a beautiful woman, I saw a companion, a partner I could share everything with for the rest of my life. I never thought that one day, I would have to face the cruel truth that this love was not all that I had imagined. Everything seemed perfect in my life with Lila. Our days were full of quiet joy, shared smiles, and moments of genuine connection. But the truth is, even in the most perfect of relationships, cracks begin to appear in ways that we never expect. The first hint that something was wrong came when Lila started to be less present. It was subtle at first, a missed call here, a text message answered too late there. I told myself it was nothing, maybe she was just busy. But my instinct started whispering doubts to me. I had always been able to trust her, but something began to gnaw at me, something that I couldn't quite shake off. Then, one evening, a friend of mine, a mutual acquaintance who knew nothing about my relationship with Lila, sent me a text that turned my world upside down. I saw Lila with another man today. I thought you should know. I froze. My heart skipped a beat as I read those words. My mind immediately raced with questions. Was this a mistake? Was this some sort of misunderstanding? I tried to convince myself that there was no way Lila, the woman I loved, could betray me like that. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just some innocent rumor. I had to know the truth. The following days were a blur. I spent my time obsessively checking her social media, looking for any signs of deception, but I found nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. Lila was always posting pictures with her friends, smiling, laughing, her life appeared to be as perfect as ever. But the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. Then came the day I decided to confront her. I had to know for sure. I was sitting in a cafe, waiting for her, my heart beating fast as I rehearsed the words I was about to say. When Lila walked in, her eyes locked with mine, and for a brief moment, I felt the connection that had always been there. But that connection seemed to fade as I asked the question that had been haunting me for days. "Lila," I began, my voice shaky, "is there something you need to tell me?" She hesitated, her eyes darting away from mine, and for the first time in our relationship, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. I could tell she was struggling with something. She took a deep breath before answering. "I'm sorry, Caleb," she said quietly, almost as if she was saying it to herself. "There's something I need to tell you." My heart pounded in my chest. The moment I had been dreading was here. Lila, the woman I had loved with all my heart, the woman I had trusted without question, was about to break my heart. "I've been seeing someone else," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't keep it a secret anymore." It was as if the ground had been ripped from beneath me. I couldn't breathe. The words hit me like a slap in the face, and for a moment, I felt as though I were drowning in disbelief. How could she do this? How could she betray me after everything we had been through? The pain was indescribable, a sharp ache in my chest that I couldn't escape. Lila continued, her voice trembling as she spoke of the other man, a wealthy businessman she had met months ago. She told me how he had offered her everything she wanted, luxury, comfort, security, and how she had been torn between the life she had with me and the life he could give her. She told me that she had never meant for things to get this far, but somewhere along the way, her feelings for him had deepened, and she couldn't deny it anymore. The betrayal stung more than I could have imagined. In a matter of seconds, everything we had built together seemed to shatter, crumbling like sand slipping through my fingers. I tried to process the words she had just said, but it felt like my mind couldn't keep up. I wanted to scream, to yell, to demand answers, but the shock kept me silent. My chest tightened, and I couldn't stop the tears that threatened to fall. Lila, sensing my turmoil, reached out for my hand. But I pulled away, the anger and hurt rising inside me. She didn't deserve my touch, not now. Not after what she had done. "I never meant to hurt you, Caleb," she said, her voice breaking. "You have to believe me. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now how much pain I've caused you." But there were no comforting words that could fix this. No apologies could heal the wound she had inflicted. The trust one had placed in her was gone, replaced by a deep, aching emptiness. All I could think about was how she had betrayed me, how she had torn my heart apart for the sake of her own desires. As she stood there, trying to reach out to me, I felt a growing sense of something darker. This wasn't the end, not yet. I wasn't going to let her walk away without facing the consequences of her actions. My heart was broken, yes, but something else was stirring within me, an anger, a thirst for revenge that I had never known before. Lila had thought she could betray me and walk away scot-free, but she was wrong. There would be consequences, and I would make sure she felt every one of them. In the days that followed Lila's confession, I found myself drifting in a fog. The world around me felt distant, as if I were watching everything through a veil. The betrayal stung deeper than any physical wound could. I tried to focus on work, on anything to distract myself from the pain, but it was always there, lingering, festering like a wound that refused to heal. I couldn't escape the thoughts of her. Of us. Of the love we had shared. What was it all for, if she could so easily throw it away? The anger inside me grew with each passing day, until it began to consume me. I couldn't look at Lila the same way anymore. She wasn't the woman I had once believed to be my everything. She had shattered that image, and now, all I could see was the betrayal. Every time I thought about her with him, my blood boiled. The thought of her in another man's arms, the thought of her choosing someone else over me, made my stomach churn. And the more I thought about it, the more a cold, calculating anger began to take root within me. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about justice. She had wronged me, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. It wasn't long before I realized that I had to make her feel the same pain she had inflicted on me. I had to make her regret her choices, make her see the depth of what she had lost. The woman I loved, no, the woman who had once been everything to me, would learn that betrayal has consequences. I began watching her from a distance. At first, it was simple curiosity. I wanted to see if she had really moved on. If she had truly forgotten about everything we had shared. But as the days went by, this curiosity twisted into something darker. I found myself researching her new life with him, the man she had chosen over me. His name was Aaron, and he was everything I was not: wealthy, charming, confident. I despised him the moment I heard his name. I started following her social media profiles more obsessively, watching every picture she posted, every update about their life together. The smiles, the vacations, the dinners, all of it gnawed at me. She seemed so happy, so carefree with him, while I was drowning in my own misery. Then one evening, I got an idea. It wasn't just about seeing her suffer emotionally, it was about taking back control. I would expose her for what she truly was. I would make sure that Aaron knew exactly who Lila was. She wasn't the perfect, innocent woman he thought she was. She was a liar, a cheater. And he deserved to know. I began to manipulate the situation, planting seeds of doubt in Aaron's mind. I started by sending anonymous messages to him, hinting at things he didn't know about Lila. I would mention little details, about her late-night phone calls, the secret meetings, the things she had said to me before the betrayal. At first, I didn't expect him to believe me. After all, who would trust an ex-boyfriend over a new lover? But I knew that over time, I could make him question everything. I became a shadow in their lives, working from the outside to dismantle the life they were building. But as I did this, something strange started happening within me. The anger that fueled my every move began to feel like power. I could control this. I could manipulate them both. Lila's happiness, her new life, would crumble under the weight of my revenge. And in that moment, it felt like everything was finally in my hands. I couldn't stop. The more I watched her, the more I wanted to destroy everything she had worked for. I wanted to see her broken, to watch her realize that the perfect life she had chosen was nothing more than a lie. I wanted her to come crawling back to me, begging for forgiveness. But deep down, I knew that was impossible. She had made her choice. She had chosen him over me, and now, I would make her regret that decision. I began orchestrating more elaborate plans, putting things in motion that would slowly erode her perfect image. I made sure Aaron received a phone call late one night from an anonymous source, telling him things about Lila, things that she had hidden from him, things that would make him doubt her. I arranged for Lila to encounter a series of situations where she would feel the pressure of her lies catching up with her. It wasn't enough to just make her feel guilty, I wanted her to feel humiliated, to lose everything she had taken for granted. Every action I took was calculated, every move I made designed to ensure that her life would never be the same again. She had stolen my happiness, and now I would take away hers. But the deeper I got into my plan, the more I realized how far I had fallen from the man I once was. The person I had become was unrecognizable, bitter, vengeful, consumed by a need for retribution. The man who once believed in love, in forgiveness, was no more. In his place was a man who had tasted the bitter fruit of betrayal and wanted nothing more than to see the world burn in return. I had crossed a line, and I knew there was no turning back. I watched from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The plan I had been crafting for weeks had begun to unfold, each piece falling into place with precision. Aaron was starting to question Lila. The subtle hints, the anonymous tips about her secretive behavior, the untraceable calls, it was working. Slowly, the cracks in their relationship started to show. One evening, I sat at home, staring at my phone screen as I watched her post a picture on social media. She looked so happy, so perfect with Aaron. The smile that once had been meant for me, that smile I had once adored, now seemed like a mask. A mask that I had helped shatter. But it wasn't enough yet. I needed to push harder. I needed to make sure that she felt what I had felt. The agony, the heartbreak, the sense of betrayal. And so, I took the next step. I knew that Aaron's trust in Lila was fragile now. He was already starting to second-guess her every word. So, I created the perfect storm. I reached out to an old friend of mine, someone who had once been very close to Lila. This friend had never liked me, but I knew that they still had connections to her. I fed them details, fake stories about her, things that were twisted just enough to seem plausible, things that would stir the pot of doubt in Aaron's mind. One night, everything came to a head. Aaron called Lila, his voice tight with anger and suspicion. I could hear snippets of their conversation from where I was hiding, just outside her apartment. I had made sure they would meet that evening. I knew that this was the night everything would unravel. "What is this, Lila?" Aaron's voice echoed through the apartment as I stood in the shadows, hidden from view. "Who are you really?" I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction as I listened. It wasn't just Lila that I was tormenting anymore. It was Aaron, too. His world was crumbling, and I was the one pulling the strings. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lila's voice was shaky, her usual calm demeanor slipping for the first time in a long while. I could tell that she was losing control, and in that moment, a dark part of me relished her discomfort. But as I watched, something I hadn't expected began to stir inside me. A small voice, the one I had been ignoring for weeks, whispered doubts into my mind. I watched as Lila's facade crumbled under the pressure. She tried to deny the accusations, but Aaron's rage was too much. In the end, he walked away, leaving her standing there, broken. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt pity for her. But then I remembered the years of love she had betrayed. I remembered the pain she had caused me. And yet, despite the success of my plan, something felt empty. I continued to monitor Lila's every move. The breakdown of her relationship with Aaron had left her vulnerable. She started reaching out to me, sending messages, calling, asking if we could talk. She wanted to explain herself, to apologize. But I couldn't let her off that easily. I knew what she wanted, a chance to fix things, to pretend like everything could go back to how it was. But nothing would ever be the same again. Not for me, not for her. Every time she reached out, I ignored her, savoring the power I had over her. She had betrayed me, and now she would have to pay the price. Weeks passed, and Lila's life seemed to spiral out of control. Aaron had left her, and the man she had once chosen over me now saw her for who she truly was, a liar. I made sure of it. Her friends distanced themselves, and the shame she had carried on her shoulders weighed heavy. The perfect life she had built with him had collapsed. The mask she had worn for so long was gone, and now the world could see her for who she really was. But even as I watched her suffering, something shifted inside me. The anger that had driven me to this point began to dull, replaced by something far more unsettling, guilt. I had wanted to see her suffer, to destroy her happiness, but now I was starting to feel the weight of my own actions. I had taken everything from her. But what had I gained? I had wanted revenge, but now I was left with an empty feeling in my chest. Watching Lila fall apart, I realized that there was no satisfaction in this. There was only the hollow echo of my own bitterness. I hadn't anticipated how far I had gone, how deeply I had allowed my anger to shape me into someone I barely recognized. I had become the very thing I despised, a person consumed by hatred and vengeance. And yet, despite all this, I still couldn't let go of the anger. I couldn't forgive. Maybe I never would. I sat alone in the silence of my apartment, the weight of my own choices pressing down on me. The revenge I had sought, the destruction I had caused, had unfolded just as I had planned. Lila was broken. She had lost everything, her relationship, her friends, her sense of self. And for a while, I had felt a sick satisfaction in watching it all crumble. But now, as the dust settled and I was left with nothing but the remnants of my anger, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost something too. The guilt had crept in slowly, at first just a fleeting thought here or there. But as time went on, it consumed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lila's face, the pain in her eyes, the desperation in her voice as she begged for my forgiveness. And yet, I had never given it. I had turned her away, again and again, pushing her further into the abyss. I had believed that vengeance would heal the wound she had left in my heart. I had told myself that seeing her pay for her betrayal would make everything right. But now, as I sat in the quiet, I realized the truth: there was no peace in revenge. There was only an endless, gnawing emptiness. Lila had reached out to me countless times after the fallout with Aaron. I had ignored her calls, her messages, each one a desperate plea for reconciliation. But I refused to listen. I couldn't bring myself to hear the sincerity in her voice, the remorse she tried to convey. I told myself that it didn't matter, that she had chosen this path, that I owed her nothing. But even then, I knew it wasn't true. I had once loved her with everything I had. I had once believed that we were meant to be together. And now, I had destroyed that. I had torn us apart, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the ruins of what we once shared. One evening, I found myself standing in front of her apartment. I hadn't planned it, but the pull to see her again was undeniable. My feet had carried me here without my permission, driven by a need to understand, to see if there was still anything human left in me. Lila's apartment was quiet, the lights dimmed as though the place itself had become a reflection of her broken spirit. I stood there for a long moment, my hand hovering over the doorbell, unsure of what to do next. Finally, I pressed the button. When she opened the door, she looked different. The spark that had once been in her eyes was gone, replaced by a weariness that seemed to age her beyond her years. She didn't look surprised to see me, but she did look uncertain, as if she was afraid of what I might say, or perhaps what I might do. "Caleb," she whispered, her voice fragile. "You came." I didn't know what to say. The words I had rehearsed in my head all these weeks, the anger, the accusations, felt meaningless now. I had wanted to hurt her, to make her feel the depth of my pain. But seeing her in front of me, so vulnerable, so broken, I didn't know if I had the strength to continue the crusade I had started. "Why?" I finally asked, my voice hoarse. "Why did you do it, Lila?" She swallowed hard, her lips trembling as she spoke. "I was scared, Caleb. I was scared of losing you. I was scared of being alone. And I made a mistake. I thought I could fix things by running away. But I only hurt you more." Her words stung, but not in the way they once would have. Now, there was only an ache, a deep, unresolved ache that seemed to fill every corner of my chest. I had sought revenge to fix the hurt she had caused me, but now I saw that it had only left me more broken than before. What was the point? What had I truly gained? "Lila," my voice faltered. "I wanted you to feel the same pain I did. I wanted you to know what it was like to lose everything. But, now I see that I've lost myself in the process." She stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "Caleb, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but please. I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. I didn't know what to do. I had built my life around the idea of revenge, telling myself that it would make me whole again. But standing here, in front of her, I realized that I had become someone I didn't recognize. I had turned into the very thing I despised, a person consumed by bitterness, by a need to destroy. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I said softly, the words tasting like poison. But I don't think I can keep living like this either. Lila took a shaky breath, and in that moment, I saw the person I had once loved, the person who had meant everything to me. Not the liar, not the cheater, but the woman I had known before all this darkness had consumed us both. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, her voice breaking. But I hope you find peace. I hope you find your way back to who you were before all of this. I nodded slowly, unable to find the words to respond. The silence between us stretched on, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. In the end, there was no closure. No grand reconciliation. Just the quiet realization that we were both lost, each in our own way, each suffering the consequences of our own choices. As I turned to leave, I realized something I hadn't known before: revenge hadn't fixed anything. It had only torn us both apart. I had thought I was punishing her, but in truth, I had punished myself. I had lost the woman I loved, and in the process, I had lost myself. Maybe there was no way to go back. But at least now, I understood that healing didn't come through vengeance. It came through letting go, through finding the strength to move forward, even when it felt impossible. And for the first time in months, I felt a small glimmer of hope, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, things could get better.